Alrighty, hello, this is Matt Petrowski. We're going to be learning about some FileMaker today, and in today's lesson, we're definitely not going to be learning everything there is to know, but we're going to be taking a look at text parsing. So hang in there, and we will be on my desktop in a minute. Alrighty, so text parsing. Wow, this is a big topic. Here is what we got as a comment on one of my videos. As I zoom in here for us. And a little too close there. All right, so Eric Plus mentioned, "Hi Matt, when you use the proper function, every word gets an upper." Well, the first letter. I would like to get only the first and last word with an upper and not the words in between. So he's, it looks like it's an address here. Elfen an der Rhein. I think it's on the Rhine. I don't know if it's German. Maybe it is. No, that's not necessarily German. I don't know what language it is, but we're going to solve the problem because solving these types of problems allow us to actually know how to solve all kinds of other problems. So let's head into the solution. If you'd like to follow along and you're using a copy of FileMaker, now I'm going to be using a copy of FileMaker 16, and in particular I'm using FileMaker 16 Advanced. So I have access to the tools, which is the script debugger, the data viewer, and the debugging controls. This menu tools, you're only going to see that on a copy of FileMaker Advanced. If you're only using a copy of FileMaker Pro, I highly suggest you get access to these tools because they are immensely useful when you want to practice and play with FileMaker. Now we're going to be starting a new solution, so I would choose this option right here. Again, I'm using FileMaker 16. I've already created the solution myself. You can create one as well. I just simply named mine text parsing. So as we zoom in on this, we can actually break down the problem and take a look at how we can solve this. Now, first off, we're going to discuss what the issue is here and some of the nuances with regards to parsing text. Now in FileMaker, obviously our goal with parsing any text is basically do it as quickly and efficiently as possible, but sometimes you can't always just do what you think you might be able to do. For example, in our situation here, we know that FileMaker has a leftwards function. We also know that FileMaker has a rightwards function. So we would be able to get the leftwards and the rightwards of this content. But let's say, for example, we had many other words in between. In fact, the number of words can vary. We also have a word count function. So what we have to do is we have to start to think creatively of all of the different ways that we can actually make this happen and then sort of determine which one is the best solution that might accommodate the largest number of situations, if you will. So in this case, I'm not always going to account on the fact that I'm exactly going to have 4 words, and if there's 4 words, then I'm going to take those 4 words and actually work with them. Let's head into the tool that I'm going to use in the data viewer. Now again, if you're using a regular copy of FileMaker, you're not going to have access to this data viewer and the watch. Again, it is one of the easiest ways to work with FileMaker's calculation engine, as you can just bring the engine up and just reference your field data or put the data in and start to work with it. You will probably have to create a calculated field in order to follow along if you have just a regular copy of FileMaker. All right, so I can see the text right there. I can obviously see it if I put it right here, and this is where we can start to break things down. Now, my suggestion is whenever you're going to break things down, take the actual text that you're working with, provided it's a small enough amount, and then just put it into the calculation itself so you can sort of see what's going on as you want to work. Now we notice that it went to field missing right here, and that's because FileMaker is trying to evaluate this calculation, and it's not a valid calculation because I pasted this text right here. I'm going to escape that with a quote, just give it a return there, and put a little asterisk and slash. That is a block quote that allows me to have this text in the calculation engine, and it's not evaluated as a calculation. So Again, I created a video, and I did that a couple of videos ago. I don't know how many. It was probably either in the environment section or the fields and calculation. Probably fields and calculations. Let's say I'm going to guess video 2 or 3. Click on the channel icon if you want to go to the playlists and find that video. It's where I talk about the let function, because that's what I'm going to use here, because it's much easier to actually break things down when you're parsing text. So I'm going to type in a shortcut that I happen to have. And I am going to do this. Again, if you don't understand what's going on with the let function here, you're going to need to watch that video. But for the most part, all I'm doing is I'm using the let function so that I can take something larger and break it down into smaller pieces. All right, so I'm going to put a semicolon, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. That's what I wanted to do, and we can take a look at this. So let's get the left. So I'm going to make a little variable called left, and I'm going to start to type in left, and I can see that I've got left and left words. Left is going to allow me to specifically take an exact number of characters. Left words is going to allow me, in this case, to just simply take the left word. So I'll take the left word. I'm going to notice what I did here. That's a good little programming trick. I knew that the inbound parameter is text, so all I have to do is add my tilde. Just a convenient little thing there. How many words do I want? Well, I want one of them. Wrong key right there. All right, so now let's see what left gave me. Left gave me alphan. Okay, perfect. So that's the left part of the equation. Now let's grab the right part. Just do the same thing we did with the left. We'll inject, and we'll go right, and we'll RIGHT, and that is going to equal right words. And that, again, is going to be of the text, and the number of words we want is 1. And let's see what the right's going to return. Again, this is the usefulness of the let function. It allows you to see the different parts. That's what I'm doing. Each one that I create, I'm just putting it here as the result and looking at the result down here. Now, when it comes to everything in between, that's going to be the problem. That's what we have to solve, and we have to think about this creatively in terms of how are we going to make this happen. We can obviously get the left words and the right words. Now we get to choose how is it that we're going to break this down and make sure that we get everything that's in the middle. Now, FileMaker does have middle values, but we have to remember that we've already taken 2 of these values off. So there's multiple ways to solve this. As there are in FileMaker, there's multiple ways to build your solution. There's multiple ways to solve most problems. Now you might be thinking, okay, I know that I'm getting a left word and a right word. Both of those count for 2 words in total. I could, say, for example, do a word count. So let's take a look at that. Let's do word count, and that's going to equal word count. And we can get a word count of the text itself. And if we put in word count, it's going to tell us that we have 4. Okay, so we could do a little bit of math here. We can actually say we're taking the left word and we're taking the right word, and we're going to get a total word count and then subtract 2 of those words off and know that we only need to get 2 words. Let's try that. So we can go here and we can go middle words. And we can say we are going to use the middle words function. And what we're going to look at is the text. And let's see if we can get this a little bit larger so I can see what's going on. Actually, we don't need those functions, so we can see what's going on. So this wants the middle words of some text, and it wants a starting word. And we're going to, obviously, we've already taken the left word, so we need to start at the second word. And how many do we want? Well, this is where we could do our math. We could put our math right here and say, what is the word count minus 2? And this would work. Word count minus 2. So that's going to give me my result right there. And let's see what middle words gets us. There we go. So we've got the middle words, and this would probably work. This would give us our solution. This is one solution to many other ways that we could solve this, and we're going to solve it in other ways as well. All right, so now let's build our result back up. Let's take our left and concatenate that with a space to our middle words. that we got, and then we will concatenate that to our right. And I need my other operator, my concatenator right there. All right, so we've taken apart the structure of the string that we have, and then we've put it back in place. And of course, we can now just put our proper on this one. And we'll do that to our left, and we'll just put the proper here too. Now here's a nice little trick that I like. Notice that I typed in the proper right there, and FileMaker automatically highlights that text. I know that the function's going to come in. There's a couple of different ways that I could do this. I could go over and grab that right value, or I can actually just, in this case, hit delete. And then on a keyboard, on the Mac in particular, it's got a function key. If you've got, on the Macintosh, that little FN key, that will do a backspace. Or if you're on an extended keyboard, that backspace allows you to just take off that quote, then jump to the end of the word and put another parenthesis. That's what I'm trying to say. So we've arrived at our result. This is just one way. We're going to take a look at this in another way. I'm going to copy all of this right here, and we're going to do this again and look at another possible way, because looking at all of the different possible ways always helps you in terms of solving other types of problems that throw in a little bit of a twist that makes it a little bit more difficult. So I've copied that to my clipboard. I'll monitor that, and I'm going to click the little duplicate here and duplicate that. Zoom out, make sure, yeah, there we go. All right, so let's solve this in another way. Zoom in and double click that, get back into our edit expression. All right, so we did a little bit of math on that one, but what is another way that we could do this? Well, we can use a lot of the same functions, but let's get rid of everything that we had before. Let's take off the word count, say we're not going to deal with the word count. Let's take off the proper and everything right here. That's going to give us our result. Take off, I don't need that comment. And I'll just take this off, make sure my calculation is actually still working. Give me my text. There we go. Give me my left. There we go. And my right. All right. So another very, very powerful piece of knowledge when it comes to text parsing is what I think of in terms of deconstructing and then reconstructing. And that is a very effective way for solving a lot of different problems, especially when you have a lot of text. And so what do I mean by that, deconstructing and reconstructing? Well, in our text, there's one thing that is in common with a lot of text. I accidentally had my caps on there. And that is spaces. So in our text right here, the one thing that is common in this string of text is the fact that what demarcates each of the words is the space, and that's pretty common in most languages. So when I'm talking about deconstructing this text, one of the things you can do is you can basically come in and do a substitution. Now, substitute is a very powerful function. So if I say I'm going to substitute my text looking for all spaces and replace that with a carriage return, what I've done is I think of this in terms of I've deconstructed the structure of the string, which normally I want to have those characters within it, and then I can reconstruct that. So this is yet another solution that I can take. So I'm going to copy this function right here of substitute, and up here I'm going to put it and call it something like reformatted, something that makes sense to me. Or if this makes more sense to you, minus spaces. If that makes anything that conveys clearly what you're doing to the text as one of the stages of our process here. So let's make sure that minus spaces is going to give me my same result, which it probably is. Minus spaces. Do I have that? Let's see. Minus spaces should, oh, tilde. That's what I'm missing right there. All right. So at this stage now, I can actually reconstruct things by simply using substitutions and putting spaces back on. And this may seem like a lot of extra work when we compare it against the first one, but trust me, just this little piece of knowledge that you can break text down and replace things with other things and then put things back in a different order, It's super helpful. So let's walk through this. I need to do this mentally here. The first word is what I'm going to do. So what I can do is I can basically reconstruct this now doing what I want to do, which would be, you would say, for example, if I needed to, again, this is going to have a lot more. I'm already getting the left and the right. So let's go ahead and do it that way. Let's just reconstruct it. Let's do a substitution on this to substitute. And again, this is something that it comes over time knowing when you want to do one versus the other. So in this case, I'm going to search for, and the substitution allows us to do multiple substitutions, which is really pretty cool. I showed this in a previous video where you can actually use these brackets when we learned about learning FileMaker's functions. And I'm going to tab in and put my first range of substitutions, knowing that I'm going to have another set of substitutions. And with the substitute function, you can do as many as you want. So the first thing that I am probably going to want to do is, in this substitution, let's substitute what I've already extracted, which is the left, with a proper of the left. And I can also do the same thing again. I can substitute on the right a proper of the right. And we can see what we're going to get here as a result. Now I need to take my trailing semicolon off right here. Let's see if we're going to get a substitution. I'm not getting an actual result here, which leads me to believe that I have an extra semicolon. Those extra semicolons will give you a little bit of an issue here. So if you notice, what we've done now is we basically just substituted what we already knew was the first word and the last word, and in order to put this back into a constructed order, because I would have been able to do this whole thing actually with this one statement, I believe, because if I wanted to, I could substitute the left word within this, meaning I wouldn't have had to use the let function. I could do it all with a single substitution based on deconstructing this, although using the let function is a lot cleaner and easier to see. But now the only thing that I'm really lacking is putting this back into the proper structure. That's basically replacing what I had formerly replaced, the spaces to returns, back from returns to spaces. So the cool thing about the substitute is it works in order from the inside out, and I should be able to just go like this. I want to now, as the final step, substitute all paragraph returns with a space. And I get the same result that I got without actually doing the math. Now sometimes, and the reason for showing you this is if I was working on a very large block of text, just doing these substitutions, from my understanding, is this would be faster in some cases than maybe something else, depending on how much text you're actually having to parse. Now, 4 minus 2 is not hard math. But if FileMaker is having to look at, let's say, a block of text that's 5,000 words, knowing all of the different ways that you can do this is actually what's helpful. It's why we're learning what we're learning here in this video. Now, also, I could have done this with the same type of approach by actually just doing the same deconstruction, taking out all of the spaces, and then taking the word count -1 and getting 3 words, and basically just taking and doing something to all these 3 and then substituting on the last one. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can break something down. And just with these 2 examples, hopefully you've been able to understand what you can do in terms of processing text to arrive at the result that you're wanting to arrive at. So if you have any questions with regards to what I've shown thus far, this is a great approach. Hopefully in this video you learned that using the let function is really powerful in terms of breaking things down into its smallest pieces that you can. And that's the way that I approach all of my FileMaker development. Nothing comes to you right away when you're developing a FileMaker. In fact, a wonderful person who can create a sculpture out of a block of stone has to take little chips away, little pieces all at a time. in order to arrive at the end result of what they're looking for. And the same thing is the case when you're dealing with FileMaker. Break things down into its smallest pieces and then test against other things. So if I wanted to test this function against other values rather than just the one, I'm not going to use the text name here. I'm actually going to come in and I'm going to put in a word, and I'm now going to test against other things. Notice what I'm doing here too, that my function will be, this one might become a little bit more robust if you put in problems based on what other users might do. Now notice I've put in extra spaces here. Now where formerly when I was using the word count, we could take a look at that by taking the same value, or you can. This is something that users might enter, and it may be an issue that you're going to come across. Here's a single space, but there's a double space. And we can see that this just sort of looks off a little bit. So now we ask ourselves, okay, if the user had entered this, what can we do to further improve or make our calculation more robust so that we capture the data the way that we want to? Well, we could add in more substitutions. So this substitute of our spaces could actually be converted into a substitution for more values than just the one. So in that case, what we could do is we could start with substituting out all double spaces. So just by tweaking this just a little bit and saying we want to substitute all double spaces for a single space, with just a small little minor tweak, we've now just accounted for the fact that if we find double spaces, now here's the cool thing, I just added in 3 spaces, and you might be saying, okay, am I going to have to go to 4 spaces and then to 5 spaces? Actually, no. I believe all you have to do is do a maximum of 3, 2, and then 1, and most all spaces will be caught. I'm not super great at math, but I've been around FileMaker enough to know sort of what I can do here. So in this case, what I'm doing with substituting 3 spaces and then substituting all 2 spaces and then ultimately substituting all single spaces, it almost really doesn't matter whether the user puts in 4 spaces, 5 spaces, well, there it caught 5. But you can see what happens as we go along by just adding in a bunch of spaces, attempting to say, you know, how can we get this so that the user really can't input a value that we won't be able to anticipate. And if you're a mathematician, or if you're somebody who knows, you know, there's a better way to do this rather than 3, 2, and 1, put it in the comments below. Let's get a value that basically allows us that if there's any variable number of spaces, what's the best way to approach this. So hopefully that's been our lesson for today. That's we're about 20 minutes in. Again, hopefully you've had time, given the delay of the video, that you've been able to put in comments, and we'll be able to switch over to those and be able to see what you guys have in terms of questions. And that's going to give us just a first lesson on text parsing. There's so many other things that we could cover with regards to text parsing, and I'll probably cover those as I go throughout the series. All right, so I'll switch over to my chat and bring that up. There we go. Get that on my side, and there's the chat right there. All right. Alex asks, what's the meaning of the tilde? Again, this was covered when I actually talk about the let function. My use of the tilde is for nomenclature only. It is just something that allows me to quickly distinguish what is a named variable that I've created within FileMaker. Again, you can use pretty much anything here in FileMaker. Some developers will use a preceding underscore on their values. Other developers maybe use double underscores. This is all just a matter of preference. There is nothing specific with regards to FileMaker about this tilde, other than it allows me to easily and almost immediately identify this value. Whereas within the rest of FileMaker text, I may have table / field _ name. That's why I don't use the underscore, because the underscore itself may be something that I'm using within field names. Again, if you're interested in any of the naming conventions that I use, I documented this heavily in 2010, and you can find that at FileMakerStandards.org. All right. And Loey actually mentioned that it's just an extra character. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, well, I just answered in video what I should have read in the comments. All right there. Homesick today, so I'm getting to see a chance live. Cool. Thank you. In fact, this question being that it came from Eric, as you go through these videos, if you come across situations where you have questions, put them in the comments down below if you're not watching this live, or you can always email me to editor@filemakermagazine.com. I can't promise that I can answer everybody's questions, but of course, when there's a great question that comes up and a solution is something we can put in, that's what I'm going to do here. How do solutions typically implement text parsing via script or auto enter? Good question, HPH group. Excellent question, actually. So the key thing that you need to know about auto enter versus a script, and the question in this particular regard, the two ways that we would solve this is, let's take our calculation and actually apply it. So I'm going to copy this once I've got all of my code. Let me switch to my desktop really quickly so we can see and follow along here what I'm doing. So what I've done is I went in and I copied my code, did a Command A, selected everything, and I now have a choice of where I can use this code. The two choices predominantly when you're text parsing come down to an auto enter, where on the field I can double click and I can put this as a calculated value. And this is most typically where I tend to put this text, so that when the user enters it, it actually gets converted at the point of entry. Of course, in this case, we would not be putting our literal string. What would we use? We would use self, because we are referencing whatever is itself in this particular field for name. We wouldn't put, you could put the value of name here, and it's the same thing in this scenario as self, but out of a matter of habit, I just put self whenever referring to a field itself. And so this would actually put all of this would convert the text, provided I check this box, because I want it to always evaluate. I would cut this and, well, cut it, and then I would be able to put it, and it would do exactly what I want to do. Now, our alternative is to actually put this in the form of a script trigger, and it would come in the form of a text. So let's do that one as well. So I'll go into define script, and I will create a new script, and I will call it something like format text. And in this case, the script would come in this format. You would be using it as an on-exit field trigger. You could also name your script on object exit if you wanted to know that it is explicitly a trigger. And you would, in this case, something that some newer FileMaker users don't know is that some script steps do not require you to actually reference a field. One of the most common is set field. Typically with set field, you need to choose a field. Well, great developer technique or trick or new learner piece of knowledge is that you do not need to actually specify a field. This does not have to have a value. I should be able to click and specify nothing. Well, in this case, I should have just left it nothing. So I'll just get rid of it, and I'll just say set field. Now, set field will work when the context under which the script is running is the field itself. So don't assign a field. Just go in and specify. I didn't want to target. I just specify your results right here, the calculation that you want to run. Now, the cool thing is, without specifying the target field, this script becomes decoupled from any context in your solution. A very key thing to understand about FileMaker development. And in this case, what I can do is I can paste my I didn't have my calculation. Let's go get that really quickly. We'll say OK right there. Come over to my calculation, select all, copy this, monitor this, move it to the side, and come back into specify calculation. There we go. So this is our alternative. I'm having a problem with our today. So what would the text be in this particular situation? Well, FileMaker has a get function. If you watched my previous videos, we have a get active field content. So if you looked at that video and you put all of those on the layout, one of the functions is get the active field contents. So in this scenario, what we have is a very cool and flexible a onObjectExit script trigger. So this is one of the two ways, this is all extra for today's video, that we would be able to solve this. So I would basically hold down the Command key and double click on this field. We have all of our script triggers. I scroll down, and the one that I'm looking at that I'm interested in is onObjectExit. So when we exit this field, we are going to do this text. Now, I haven't talked about this, but script triggers themselves have a couple of different states, or a couple, two different ones. There is a pre versus a post. So let me see if this actually works, because we need to turn off temporarily that auto enter to make sure it works for our exit, because it might be a post and I might need to do it on data save. So let's see when we exit there. It does actually work. All right. So we took off the auto enter. You can see that right there. And we are now actually using the onObjectExit. It is on a script trigger right there. When do you do one versus the other? That's the ultimate question, and I finally got to it. I wanted to show you both so that you knew, what HBH Group is talking about. Auto enter calculations trigger and are used every time that data is manipulated. And the scenario goes like this. If you have a routine import, then that import suffers the consequences of all auto enter calculations. So in other words, if I wanted the fastest import possible because I'm importing, let's say, data from an external resource on a regular basis, then I know that auto enter is going to trigger each and every time. Now, if that gives me the desired results because the text that's being imported actually is in the lowercase format and I want the auto enter to actually apply, then great. But if I know that most, let's say 90% of the data being imported into FileMaker already has the data in a formatted structure, and I really don't want to pay the penalty of that auto enter, because let's say I have 100 other fields and 25 of them have auto enters, and I want the fastest import possible, then it's better for me to use this on a script trigger, because the script trigger means that the next time that the user is going to edit this record, if they are, or if I'm going to perform a find looking for all fields that have a all lowercase string, which you can do, then that's probably a better approach. So I have the two. I could pay the performance penalty of an import that's 90% correct and use auto enters and just keep those on the layout and not really care. Maybe your import happens during the middle of the night when users are actually not using the database. It's no consequence. Go ahead and use the processing power of the computer. Or if it's an import that happens midday while users are using it, then I'm going to put it into the user interface and actually integrate that into an onObjectExit. And if I wanted to, I'm then going to write a routine in my database that's actually going to say, look for all fields that are all lowercase, and then run that process for me. And that could be done either on the client, which is not as efficient, or on server side. An advanced topic we'll probably cover at another time, way later down the road, or I may have a series of videos that we can take a look at that I may be offering. All right, so it looks like we didn't have any other comments that came in. So Eric, down there at the bottom right there, thanks for the question. I was happy to answer it, and I think that's going to give us a wrap for this video. Sophisticated answer. I love giving sophisticated answers because I want everybody to know, what are the possibilities, how things work in FileMaker. All right, so that means we are going to be heading out as I switch here. Of course, if you'd like to subscribe and get notified via YouTube, you can do that right here. And the next video in the series, as soon as I record it, will show up right here. Thanks for tuning in, and put your comments down below if you have any questions about FileMaker. And I'll see you later. Happy FileMaking.